Hello and welcome everyone, I'm Madals and this is game number 2 of a best of 3. It is a Zerg versus Protoss and it's going to be played out on Belshir Vestige. So, good map, good races, good matchup, and importantly game number 2 of what so far has been a pretty interesting series. Game number 1, we saw one of these two players be very aggressive early on and boy did it pay off well. So, are we going to see the same thing in game number 2? We'll have to keep an eye out for that, but down in the bottom right position we have got spawning as the red Protoss player from Team Millennium, it is Adel. And his opponent up in the top left, currently 1-0 up from Team Acer. It is the orange Zerg player, it's Bly. So, Belshir, it's one of those maps where you can go for something a bit more aggressive. The natural has quite a wide ramp into it. It's not too much of a rush distance, and we saw in game 1 as well that Bly was very, very successful with that early game speedling play. Will he do the same thing again? He very well may, because it worked so well and really did just dominate that first game. Actually, is there a downside to doing it? That it all came from a hatchery first opening, which would be a pretty interesting thing to do. Can be quite confident though on Belshir that your opponent as a Protoss is going to be going for a gateway expand, because as I said, the natural entrance is really wide and trying to get a wall off there can be awkward, so I think that's a safe thing. The other thing that I am going to keep an eye out for is whether Adel decides to go for an early scout this game, because previously no probes came out to scout at all. It was literally just sitting back, waiting very patiently for the push to come in, and that's what really caught Adel off guard. But Adel this game may not skip the Zealot, may just choose to get that out for a little extra defense early on, may choose to just refine the play slightly, but Bly not going to do any of that, just going to go for exactly the same build so far. Hatch into gas, into pull. This time if he's going to go for that quick speed, hopefully he will pull the drones out at 100, not 104, and I know that seems like a really minor point, and it's like, Madals, stop being so, like, boring with how precisely you should do it, but at this sort of level of play you've got to be getting everything right on the money if you're going to hit it as best you can. Now interestingly, Cybercore is coming down, there's still no drone coming out, a probe coming out to scout. The Overlord is going to see there's no natural down, so he's going to be quite happy that the build is very similar out of Adel, who has just getting up the second gas now. That's just going to allow the mothership core to come out nice and quickly, so I believe it's fractionally different. I'm trying to desperately remember whether game 1 the second gas came down or not, but I know that Adel did go for a relatively quick natural, and it definitely feels quite a bit later at the moment compared to what it was in game 1. So Bly just going to be keeping this Overlord there. The Zealot wasn't skipped this game as well, so that's automatically going to make the natural base a little bit later. But now the Zealot is out, the Sentry following this up, 6 Zerglings on their way. The Zergling speed has got started, pulling out exactly 100 gas there, and this now means that the Zerglings can start putting on a bit of pain. 2 Queens on their way out too. Are we going to get more than 6 Zerglings though? That's a big question, because currently the Overlord hasn't seen a natural Nexus thrown down, so won't want to commit too much until he sees that, in case it's a one base play. But there goes down now with the Nexus, additional Zerglings starting up as soon as that is spotted, and this is just Bly trying to make sure that he's going to have enough units to really put on a bit of pain. Speed is 43 seconds through completion. There is the Zealot and the Sentry sitting there. A second Sentry following this up, so it's going to be an easier defense than the first game just due to having these units here. But the natural Nexus is still going to be in just as much of a problem. The Pylon could get focused down. The Nexus could even get focused down. 8 more Zerglings are on their way out. The Sentry and Zealot are going to see these 2 Zerglings running their way forward. The Zergling does manage to make it in to the main base though, and we'll get a good little scout out, see what is coming down. The rest of the Zerglings are pulling up. They don't want to overcommit to this. Don't want to try and give away that the speedling push is coming in once more, but 2 gateways already on their way. The Zealot is going to try and get in the gap. Will the Zerglings be able to get in before anything comes down? Yes, they will. The probe gets surrounded. This is now a bit of a problem here for Adel, once again not able to complete up that wall off in time, and as such these sentries are going to start taking some fire, especially the one with this high energy here could get focused down. Probes trying to just block the advance of the speedlings, more flooding their way through though. The wall off is still not yet down complete. The Zerglings in the main base starting to work away at some of these probes, trying to force a base back, but the attention was not on the wall and still not completed. More speedlings on their way in, and while the probes are valiantly fighting up against these Zerglings, the Zerglings are no doubt winning it quite convincingly. The Sentry gonna try and get himself blocked into a corner with that force field. The Zealot taking quite a bit of fire. We do have another Sentry trying to come out, but of course even with these 2 additional gateways they're only powered by this one pylon, which is currently getting focused very effectively. This Sentry has just put himself inside a force field. He's just like, screw this, I do not want to go outside, I'm just going to put myself in a protective little bubble. The probes are getting taken out here. There is another Sentry out on the field. There's also that mothership core, which is going to have to try and work away with some of this, but another sentry is going to get taken down here. Good force field in the main, stops the speedlings coming in, but more speedlings are following this upper spore caller coming down just in case there were DTs, proxied or something like that. So just a nice little move there by Bly, making sure he's safe, but already picking up a good number of workers. The natural is taking some good fire. Remember, in game number 1, Bly managed to kill 20 workers early game. This game, not quite as many yet, but the natural is looking to fall, and this would be a massive loss because Adel really only managed to just scrape back in economically by being able to get out a good number of probes from Connor boosting 2 next side. But now with only the single nexus at the main, not even going to be able to do that. Zerglings are able to slip through that small gap there. Probes getting pulled to try and fight. 14 workers have now been killed. The natural nexus has been taken out. Bly is in an amazingly good spot, still working away at even more probes. Another force field goes down. An attempt by these sentries to save as many of the workers as possible. 19 workers killed though. The natural nexus taken down. 2 gateways unpowered. This is not the sort of start that Adel would have wanted after game number 1, and all the while, Bly, he's just pumping out more speedlings. He knows this wall off isn't complete, wants to kill those 2 gateways, prevent the natural coming down for as long as zerglingly possible, or while taking a third. So this is now just Bly happily saying, okay, well, I've got a good number of speedlings out, I'm going to come and put on some more pressure. Another attempt at a pylon. 2 come down here, not going to be able to complete the wall off though, before in come the zerglings. There is a force field down, does stop more reinforcements coming through. But there's no probe here, and with no probe that means no additional wall off will be able to come down. Another force field being used that stops a probe from getting down, which means the wall off is still got huge gaps in it, and in now come more speedlings. The sentries trying to get surrounded. That mothership core does have enough energy for a photon overcharge, but there is no nexus here in order to use it on, so that in itself is a bit awkward. Sentries are just going down so quickly here to all of these speedlings that ultimately that is what Bly really wants. Picking off all of those sentries is a huge amount of gas getting taken out early game. 20 more zerglings coming down. We've also got the lair on its way. Those 2 gateways have now been depowered once again. And just constantly depowering these gateways is causing such a problem for Adel because he's only got 2 gateways worth of production. And Bly now happily about to finish up his 3rd hatchery. And once that comes down, that is actually where the production really starts ramping up for a Zerg player, and he can start getting out some really awkward things. He's got more gases coming down. He's going up to all 4 gases with lair nearly finished. That seems like Mutalisk could be on the cards, which again in game number 1 was the final nail in the coffin. But at long last, it appears actually that we're going to see Adel be able to get a secure wall off here. But no, there's a small gap. Some speedlings do make their way through just before the force field goes down, but only a single speedling, so not going to be able to do much damage, but will be able to get a good little bit of scouting information down, say, okay, exactly what have you got? And the answer is not very much in the slightest, and what that means is that Bly is going to be feeling very comfortable. He's got 10 drones being pumped out here, still sitting at 45 workers to just 23, about to be 55 to 23. Massive lead for the Zerg player there, the 3rd base up. The natural still hasn't actually mined anything really, I don't think. Nope, not a single mineral patch has lost any minerals apart from 1 now. So this is in itself really frustrating, but now Adel starting to move forward. Bly is just keeping these speedlings here, trying to get a good look at the size of the army, trying to get a good read on what Adel could be moving out with so he can get an appropriate defense, but opting just to get a single spine crawler down here at the natural in case any DTs wander in. He's also got the spire coming down. He's got the 5th and 6th gas on their way, ready to pump out a lot of Mutalisks when needed, when that spire is done. But Adel just sitting back, doesn't have enough stuff to move out. If you move out with this kind of army size and your opponent has a roach warren down, there's just going to be a flood of roaches and speedlings and you will not be able to defend it. So it's 4 gates. That's the only production. There's literally no tech at the moment for the Protoss player. Adel has got to pull off an absolute miracle. But if the Spire finishes, if the Mutalisks come out, that miracle may be too much of an ask. But moving across now, admittedly there's no roach warren, and that is why we're seeing some almost panic spine crawlers being built everywhere. Bly knows he needs to buy himself some more time, and if he does that, then actually things won't be too bad. There are some speedlings coming in from behind. Just going to try and get a little read on the army, get an exact look at the size of it, if there's a probe coming, because the proxy pylon would be the really awkward thing. Without reinforcements, that shove is not too scary, but if there were, then it could be a bit of a problem. But here comes 10 Mutalisks now. Adel just trying to get himself into a spot where actually he's got something that he can try and use, but with just so many stalkers, so many sentries, or sorry, so few, but prospectively against compared to the fact there's only 2 Zealots on the field, a lot of Speedlings and Mutalisks will be able to clean this up very easily indeed, and that's why we're seeing now 13 Mutants on their way out, 22 Speedlings coming down too. There's no upgrades on either side, +1 trying to come down here for Adel, who's trying to get things into the later stages, getting now the Proxy Pylon, heading up towards the third, but the Mutalisks already making their way across the map, heading straight towards the natural, which is 100% undefended. More Spine Crawlers coming down here at the natural base, drones getting pulled up from the third, just keeping the gas there because that's the one thing they really want. But here comes the mass recall, forced back to try and defend against these Mutalisks, but there is Adel. GG, well played, and Bly takes the series 2-0. So I hope you all enjoyed that, ladies and gentlemen. That was a fun little game. Bly showing the dominance of early aggressive Zerg play against the Protoss player who isn't prepared for it. So if you enjoyed it, make sure you like the video, leave a cool comment, and of course subscribe. I get new games up daily, so I'll catch each and every one of you tomorrow for yet another new cast. I'm Madals, thanks for watching, bye for now.